Hey everyone, and welcome to the Cheyenne Hills Podcast, Verse by Verse. We know it's often hard to find time to spend studying God's Word, so we're happy you can join us as we read, unpack, and discuss Scripture every Tuesday and Thursday. We hope you enjoy the program.
Across the street and around the world, Cheyenne Hills.
Well, hello there. We're so glad that you joined us here on the podcast for Cheyenne Hills Church. We are doing the verse by verse. I am René. I'm the executive minister here. To my right, I have Austin Miesner, who is our youth director. And over here we have Ken Will, who has been a former pastor, but is now
and super smart guy.
Super valuable here as we go through Genesis verse by verse. And so we are still working our way through Genesis. Last time we talked about how Pharaoh needed someone to interpret his dreams, and Joseph finally was able to be released from prison, come up, give Pharaoh some indication of what was going to happen and who he needed to help facilitate this 7 years of bountiful harvest and 7 years of famine. And come to find out, Pharaoh thought Joseph was the man to fulfill that position and help save the people of Egypt. And so we're going to pick up in chapter 41, verse 45. Then Pharaoh gave Joseph a new Egyptian name, Zephaniah Paneah. He also gave him a wife whose name was Azarnath, and she was the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On. So Joseph took charge of the entire land of Egypt. He was 30 years old when he began serving in the court of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And when Joseph left Pharaoh's presence, he inspected the entire land of Egypt. So I want to just kind of pause there. We were kind of talking about this new name that was given to Joseph. What were some of the things you guys found out about this name?
Well, in the margin of my Bible, it says that possibly it's an Egyptian name meaning God speaks or he lives. But
and then mine said it's possibly the nourisher of two lands or the living one. So that's and then it continues on saying really nobody knows, but it's not uncommon that if you move to another foreign land that you would get a foreign name that people would know you by instead of your Hebrew name.
Okay, so here Joseph has been given a new position, and he's been given a new name, and we're not really sure what it means. However, it was just a sign that he was now going to be Pharaoh's right-hand man, and I kind of think it sounds like Zephanath. Panera sounds like my favorite place to eat, Panera Bread. So I think it's probably a good name. So we were kind of laughing about, can you imagine the dynamics at this family? Here we've got this Pharaoh. We've got his daughter, who is now married to Joseph. So it's like he is involved with the family now. He is fully enveloped with this family here. So let's move on here. It says, as predicted, for 7 years, the land produced bumper crops. During those years, Joseph gathered all the crops grown in Egypt and stored the grain from the surrounding fields in the cities. He piled up huge amounts of grain like sand on the seashore. Finally, he stopped keeping records because there was too much to measure. During this time, before the first of the famine years, his 2 sons were born of Joseph and his wife, Anasras, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of, and they go on. I had to turn my page here. Joseph named the older son Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my troubles and everyone in my father's family. Joseph named his second son Ephraim, for he said, God has made me fruitful in the land of my grief. At last, the 7 years of bumper crops throughout the land of Egypt came to an end. Then the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had predicted. The famine also struck all the surrounding countries, but throughout Egypt there was plenty of food. Eventually, however, the famine spread throughout the land of Egypt as well. And when the people cried out to Pharaoh for food, he told them, go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you. So with the severe famine everywhere, Joseph opened up the storehouses and distributed grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout the land of Egypt. And people from all around came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was so severe throughout the world. So we see that Joseph is now, he's got a new position, he's got a new wife, and he has 2 sons. And the naming of these sons, to me, really is a reflection of his heart. So this first one, Manasseh, he said, God has made me forget all my troubles and everyone in my father's family. When I read that, I think that this might be a mark in the sand where he has really forgiven his family. Maybe he's forgiven his brothers for throwing him in the pit. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, it's not really clear. I mean, the commentary that's in my study Bible kind of leans that direction, because it just says that he hasn't been harmed anyway. That him being so far away hasn't done any harm to him. And so I kind of, because I don't think it means he's. You could read it as, I mean, in some cases of like, well, I'm just gonna forget them. They did all these things, phooey. Like I'm just not even gonna remember. But
Right.
But even thinking back to, he was his dad's favorite. He didn't even get to say bye to his dad. So like, I think that would be a more generous reading of the text of saying, yes, no, this is probably him saying, nope, I'm forgiving them, because I mean, really, have I? Yes, it was really bad for a couple of years, but now look where I'm at here.
Right.
So that
Right.
I think that's an okay one. I don't know what Ken has to say on the subject.
Well, I mean, I think it does really indicate a step of healing.
And children
whereas-
do that a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
just even in my own like situation of family and stuff, like when we've had our 3 babies, just having those, and each step provides either renewal or just an opportunity for forgiveness with it, even within the family, or even stronger bonds to be built, even if they're not around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really good. Really good. And then the second child was named Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my grief. I really love that. I just feel like Joseph has renewed hope that even though he has been this slave, he's had ups and downs and has been in prison, he now sees that God has made him fruitful. Where everything else looked so bad, God has brought about restoration, maybe even redemption of his story.
Well, and I think that there's we can sometimes have a misconception of, well, if I'm going to name my kid this because I want, like, their name precedes them and what they're going to do in life. Whereas the Hebrews really named them out of what was going on at the time. And I think we've also kind of lost that as, I'm just going to name my kid because it was my favorite whatever, like,
Right,
you know,
right. My
it's like,
favorite
that was
basketball
that
player.
was a really cool name, so I'm just gonna name him that, and we dedicated Augustine and Amelia this weekend at the service, and Galen had made the comment, Augustine's like a really big name to come in and fulfill, but I mean that's kind of like when we had Augie, that was kind of like where we were at in life. Not to mention it's where my namesake is derived from, and so like just even saying this, like, when they come back, well, why did you name me this? We have answers for at least the boys. My wife got to name the daughter, so that's going to be her and Amelia's conversation. But like having that idea of when we name children, of being able to tell that story of what was going on at that time, instead of, like you said, just, oh, that was my favorite football player, like go Von Miller, like what?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Who was it? Some rock star named his child Moon Unit?
Yeah.
Frank Zappa. It's like, really?
Yeah.
That's what? Okay.
Well, and names are just that there's a lot of meaning and how people respond to them. And so I just think that every time Joseph said Manasseh, he's like, you know what? I've forgiven. I'm going forward. I'm forgetting, what was past, and I'm moving forward. And every time he said Ephraim, he was like, man, look at what God has done. And these 2 verses struck me about 4 years ago. I mean, it kind of became my prayer that that God would help me forgive and forget and move on. And my prayer too was that God would make me fruitful, even though I had gone through this time of grief. And I don't know, I can confidently say that I've seen God answer those prayers. Sorry.
Well, I mean, we see those scars. We might use stained glass or Dick Barry's example of broken pottery, but like very realistically, we have scars, and whether that, I mean, not to say that children are scars, but they are markers of what we talked about heaping up the stones way back with Jacob and Laban and saying, I will not do this, but like when you come across it, I know that this is what it's going to mean. And so like even having children in a time of whatever and remembering that's what was going on, this is the hardship that we went through. Those are things that even just like what you're saying, every time he said those names, oh, it means this. But then also well, why did you name your kids that? Then they have the story of, well, this is why, of how I can testify to God's faithfulness, especially spoiler alert of what we're going to see in the rest of Genesis of when he meets the rest of his family. I'm sure they're like, well, why did you name your kids that? What does this mean? Like, and he could say, well, this is why.
Right. So just a great testament of how Joseph has healed and moved forward. And then the last part here that we just read, we are seeing the fulfillment of Pharaoh's dreams, that those bumper crops came in, and then pretty soon here came the famine. And everything that Joseph had done of storing up the grain was helped to feed not only the Egyptians, but helped feed people throughout the world, it says. So anything else to add to that, guys?
Nope.
No, I think we're good.
Pretty well got it.
Okay. All right. So we have finished up chapter 41. And now, as you would in any type of movie, we are about to see some elements come together to where there is like the climax of the movie is right around the corner. So hope you can join us next time. Thanks so much.